Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. Welcome. I am so excited for this episode. You get to meet, at least by listening and by hearing, a really awesome friend that I got to meet. Man, that's been like a year ago now.
Yes.
We got to work on a film together, and I remember one of the first days looking at that call sheet and wondering, who is Skeeta?
I've grown to love Skeeta, and he is awesome. And so I'm really excited for him to be a part of this podcast and just talking about mental health. And we're going to hit some pretty tough topics and pretty sensitive ones, but I think it's a really important conversation to get started. So Skeeta, will you just introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners, let them know who you are, and maybe just a little bit about your passion for mental health?
All right. Hey, my name is Skeeta Jenkins. I'm originally from Louisiana, a little town by Baton Rouge called Plaquemine, Louisiana. But I live in Texas now, Temple, Texas. And you're right, we did meet on a movie set. And as we got to talk, I realized how much we had in common with mental health. My background is in marriage and family. I've worked in the foster care system in Texas for 23 years. And now I'm just freelancing, doing some other things and acting as well. So I hope I didn't miss anything. Married, 2 kids, one in college, one's a junior. Yeah, that's about it, Megan.
That's awesome. No, it's so cool. And I loved, like, we were on set for just such a short time, but we got to have really good conversations.
Yeah.
And that's where it sparked when I was looking at guests for, this season. I was like, oh, got to get Skeeta on here because I want to talk about some really important issues that, one, I don't know a lot about. So this episode is called The Elephants in the Room, which Skeeta gave the name to because I didn't know what to name it. It was going to be like a paragraph long, and that just doesn't work. So some tough topics, some things that maybe don't get talked about a whole lot. And I think that's why it's so important. And I'm so excited about having this conversation. And one of those is just men and mental health and the stigma attached to that. And so I want to just hear from you and your perspective. Like, why do you think there's such a stigma attached to men talking about their own mental health?
I think just from being with men, going to men's conference, from counseling men, we have this perception of, like, for instance, if I walk inside a conference room to hear a big speaker, the men are sizing each other up like, hey, I'm bigger than him, and I think and men have been raised that way. We can't show pain. We have to get it right. You have to do this. You have to do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't show feelings. And man, it has basically just held so many men back from just being their true, authentic selves. And you know as well as I know, what do you call it? The crock pot mentality. The more it takes a long time for that stuff to cook but when it does cook, it's boiling. And sometimes that's what society get for men. We hold stuff in so long that when it does come out, it comes out as anger. It comes out as resentment. It comes out as, man, this man hate me, and your kids can feel it. Your family can feel it. And it's like, no, we are supposed to be in communion one to another. And I think that's why it's important for men to it's okay for you to share your feelings and still be a man. And I think so many men feel, man, if I share this part of me, people are going to look at me different. They won't look at me the same. And we see it as a weakness when it's one of the greatest strengths ever.
Yeah, no, I think that's so, like, on the head of what it is. And it really boils down to that expectations that society has set up for men. We've heard it time and time again. I mean, I've even heard it just from other men talking, around each other is like, you have to man up, you have to hide your feelings.
Yeah,
How, like, even just some
yeah.
personal stories or just things that you've seen, like, how did that affect you hearing those kind of phrases?
I mean, as a man growing up with that, you kind of get in that mindset. I can't show feelings. I always I got to get it right. I can't let anybody see my weakness because they're gonna think I'm weak.
Mm.
They're gonna think I'm less than a man. And man, that is so untrue. It's almost like that saying, and you probably heard it: sticks and stones may break
Mhm.
my bones, but words never hurt. And words
Oh,
hurt
yeah.
worse than people give them credit for. And it's like, and I think men have that mentality, that words mentality.
Mhm.
No, words do hurt, and your mental health hurt. That's why you see so many men now are in society are just having
Mhm.
issues. And the issues is, man, I've been holding this stuff in all my life, and now it's coming out on the people I
Yeah.
love, and it creates resentment, it creates bitterness and anger and all of those bad words that are not so much bad words, just negative
Mhm.
words that people use. And I think we have to, as men, even if we got to start at home, opening up to our wives
Mhm.
and wives, and this is for women too. When a man tell you something, his deepest secrets is don't use it against
Mhm.
him later on, because guess what he'll do next time? He won't tell you
Yep.
anything and shut down, and you'll be like, oh, my husband don't communicate with me. Oh, because when he tried to communicate with you, y'all had an argument, and then you threw everything in his face. And you can't, with men, you cannot
Yeah.
throw it in their face, because when you throw it in the face, I'm going to hit my shutdown button
Mhm.
again and not tell you anything.
Yeah.
It's all about safety. It's all about making men feel safe. Yeah, we are the protectors, we are the providers, but at the same time, the protector and the provider need somebody
Mhm.
to share their stuff with too.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And honestly, I think everyone, if you throw it back in their face, they're going to shut down. That's a pretty, you
Yes,
can't be vulnerable
yes,
and then have it, thrown right back at you. And so, with that just in mind,
yeah.
but how do we create some safe spaces? How do we create safe spaces with men to
Oh,
talk about their mental health?
I think you just said the word that spoke volume, and it speaks volume every time I hear it: vulnerable.
Mm.
And how do you get a man to be vulnerable? You make him safe.
Mhm.
And not just men, though. You make women safe
Mhm.
and they're vulnerable. Because uh, either way you put it, men and women, when I don't feel safe, I'm not going to show you any vulnerability
Right.
in me, especially men. If men don't feel safe that I can share something with Megan, and I don't have to worry about next week hearing
Yeah.
it again or hearing it thrown in my face. Ooh, next time I could share this with Megan.
Right.
I could share. Megan, I'm gonna give you an analogy.
Mhm.
One of the things I do with couples is I have these two backpacks, and a couple's having issues, and I'll say, okay, write down some words that you haven't dealt with and put them in your backpack.
Mm.
And so they put them in the backpacks, and I have them put the backpacks in front of them. And this is when they're dealing with intimacy issues, trust issues. I say, now try to hug each other. Well, the
Mm.
backpacks get in the way of them being hugging each other. The only way for them to truly feel the hug is to put the backpack behind them. And you see, if men don't feel vulnerable, if women don't feel vulnerable, it's like the backpack is
Mm.
always in front of us. I can't take anything out of this backpack. I got to keep it to protect me. And it's when you put the backpack behind you and say, okay, let me take one thing out and share this with you. And I take that one thing out of my backpack, a word. I give them
Mhm.
words. So they use these note cards, they pull them out, and they share that word with the other person. Facial reactions. If I share something that you think is weird, facial reaction,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be vulnerable. And if I share it with you and you judge me, I'm not gonna be vulnerable with
Mhm.
you. You have to, when you're dealing with people, everybody that deals with men especially, you have to come to it where you put your agenda down.
Yeah.
Because if you coming in with the agenda of how you want me to respond, how you want me to think, you go expectations. You said that earlier. Expectation always lead to disappointment,
Mm.
because people are There's only one person I know that can live up to any expectation in this world, and he's perfect,
Yeah.
and none of us are not. So vulnerable. Oh my goodness! You spoke to me when you
Mm,
said vulnerable. We have to, as a society, make it comfortable that men. See, I think most women don't have a problem with being vulnerable,
mm.
but men have a problem with being
Yeah.
vulnerable because the fear of is going to come back and bite me in the butt,
Yeah.
especially with men.
Yeah. And so what would like advice would you give someone like a man who's struggling, who feels like they want to talk about, what they're struggling with, but they feel like they can't talk or, they don't feel like they have that safe person. What would you say to them?
The greatest advice I can give them is you have to. No man is an island,
Mm,
so we have to find people. One of the greatest examples I can give is someone who walked this earth 2,000 years ago.
mhm,
He surrounded himself with 4 men. Later, he added 8 other men to that group, and I think it was to show us we need to have. I need to have 4 men that I can surround myself with, that I could be vulnerable with. They'll call out my blind spots. They do
mhm.
it in love. I could be vulnerable with them. That can call out my blind spots. I can share the most deepest, the intimate things, and not worry about whether I'm going to hear it a week later, I'm going to hear it a month later, I'm going to hear it later.
Mhm.
It just breaks your heart when you say something to someone and then later on somebody else say,
Mhm.
well, I thought I just told that person that.
Yeah.
So it's it becomes down to that trust. It comes down to and I'm saying all of that to tell you what can I say to men? We have to find our huddle.
Mm.
We have, and huddle is a group of men that you can be vulnerable with, that you can be committed to, that you can be in an accountability relationship. You meet once a week, you meet twice a week.
Mhm.
I have men that I know that in my personal life, I can pick up the phone 1 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to answer me.
Yeah.
And I can share anything with them. And two of the men I've had over 30-year relationships with, and nothing I've said to them ever got back
Mm.
to me, and I never heard it from someone
Mhm.
else. So when I know from experience that when I'm hurting, I know who I can go to,
Yeah.
because they're going to hear me. They're not going to have an agenda.
Mhm.
Their only agenda that time is going to be, I'm going I'm going to be here for my friend. And I'll tell you this, my wife died for 6 minutes
Mm.
from a health issue, and she was brought back. She had a heart transplant, and I had friends who came, sat at the hospital with me, and you would have thought we had the best conversation ever. They didn't say a word to me.
Mm.
And later they told me, I didn't come to do nothing but sit with you. And it
Yeah.
felt like we had the best conversation we ever had in our lives, because they knew what the mission was. They knew that nothing they could tell me in that moment
Mhm.
was going to fix what was going on with my wife. But they was just there to be there with me.
Yeah.
So men, we have to get to the point where men on men, I'm talking about, because women do it way better than we do. Men have to get to the point where we can trust and hold each other accountable and do it all in love. And
Mhm.
speaking of men, I think the stigma even goes further, whether you call it the Black community
Mhm.
or the African American community. That's been a big stigma that,
Yeah.
African American men don't seek mental health. And it's almost like, man, I constantly ask myself, what happened in society where we don't trust going to a therapist? We don't
Mm.
trust sharing, man, I'm struggling with this. What is this feeling I'm feeling where I lay in the bed 4 or 5 days and I just can't get up. I have
Mhm.
no will to get up. And I'm just keeping this to myself. And I think this is it's just been a stigma that for a long time that men, and then on top of that, African, and I'm African American, so I can say it.
Yeah.
We just don't seek mental health. And I've questioned it. I've read in
Mhm.
books, different people reasons why they think it doesn't happen. And I'm like, man, it all boils down to we were raised to be tough.
Mm.
We were raised, you watch those old videos of little girls caring for dolls, two boys playing with two trucks, eventually they start banging the trucks together. It's that tough man mentality that we have held for years and years and years. And now it's almost like it's hitting the fan and people don't have anyone to turn to
Mhm.
that they can be vulnerable with, that they can hold accountable. And that's been the biggest blessing of my life, is having men in my life that I can reach out to when I'm vulnerable. I can reach out to when I'm struggling. I can reach out to, because in my innate nature, and God's made me that way, is I'm a helper. I'm an
Mhm.
encourager. But sometimes the encourager needs encouragement.
Mhm.
So I have people who sow into me too and give me. Find people that will sow into you and fill your cup up, men, and you'll see how easy it is to reach out to your brothers and to those men who, and it all boils down to just loving on one
Mhm.
another. You see, I don't have to see eye to these men that are in my life. We have different belief
Mm.
systems, but we know, and they know that I don't have to see eye to eye with them to walk hand in hand, because you're my brother.
Mm.
And no matter what you look like, I have Black, African American, or what you want to call it. I have white men that sow into my life. I got Hispanic brothers that sow into my life, because at the end of the day, we all men,
Mm.
and we all have red blood, and we all have issues, and we all have worries, and we all have concerns, but we find a way to reach out, to be committed to one another, to, hey, if I need something, I got some men who will come and take me,
Mm.
like the paralyzed man. He couldn't get up and walk,
Mhm.
but 4 men came to him and say, okay, we're going to take you
Mm. Yeah.
to the master. Okay, all these people are in the way of us taking you to the master. We can't get in the window. We can't get in the front door. We going on the roof. You gonna see him today some kind of way. And we need men in our lives who
Mm.
say, my brother is hurting. We coming to help you some kind of way, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a talker, so you're gonna have
No.
to cut me off.
No, I just wanna, like, sit back here and go, like, "Amen," because it's so good.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's
And
such an important conversation to have.
it really is. And I'm so thankful that you are wanting to talk about it,
Mhm.
because I think it's something you shouldn't stop talking about.
Yeah.
The more your listeners, the more people hear it, they hear it. And to the men who are listening to us today, it's okay to seek out help, my
Yeah.
friends.
Mhm.
No, my brothers, I'm going to call you.
Mhm.
Well, that dude don't even know me. Guess what? I love you anyway. We have to come to a point where we can reach out to each other, no matter what we look like, no matter what we sound like, no matter what our features look like,
Mhm.
no matter, we need to take that no matter out the way and say, you know what? This man need loving, I need loving. And the only way for us to see, you see, all these issues in the world, to include mental health, I think if we sat down and everybody who came to the conversation drop their agenda
Mm.
and pick up that V word, that you be vulnerable. Let me see how I can be vulnerable. Just men, if you're going to a conference, if you're going to a group, do this for me. Drop your agenda, drop your expectations, and just go and be there and tell yourself and pray and say, Lord, I'm just going to this meeting today just to be vulnerable
Mm.
and to let these people know how I feel, what I'm going through, and watch how that weight be lifted off your shoulder. And watch how those men will wrap their arms around you and pray for you and let you know that they're there for you.
Mm.
We have so long as men been an island. We can do it by ourselves. Home builders across this country have built, the living room used to be in the front of the house. Now it's in the back of the house.
Mm.
When we walk in our neighborhoods, we used to have sidewalks. We don't even have a sidewalk anymore. We drive up to our houses. We open the garage with our clicker and we close it right
Mm.
back. See, Society has built into that isolation alone. We don't need other people.
Yeah.
It reinforces already what men think. We don't need other people to help us. One of the greatest strengths we can ever have is doing things with another person.
Mm.
One person, you can get something done, but two people can get way more done.
Yeah.
And we need to surround ourselves with people who will come alongside us, support us, encourage us. And for you men out there listening to us who love football, I play football. And people ask me what was the best thing about football? It was the huddle.
Mm.
Because I know I had 10 other guys in that huddle. If I messed up, they were going to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
If I did good, they were going to encourage me. If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what a huddle of people who surround yourself with, they can provide you with encouragement, affirmation, confirmation that you're in it together. They can cry with you.
Mm-hmm.
The scripture reminds us that you weep with those who weep. You know, in Romans, it says you weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another.
Yeah.
Do not, I mean, I can quote the scripture, but it all boils down to that word you said, vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Men, I challenge you today to be vulnerable. And even if you didn't start with the man, start with being vulnerable in your own house
Mm.
with your wife. And then lead that to, okay, I trust my pastor. Go be vulnerable with your pastor.
Mm-hmm.
This dude here seems like an upstanding man. Go be vulnerable with that guy and watch how the relationships build. See, we live in a world where people want to hold you accountable, but they don't have a relationship
Mm.
with you. And no man is not going to let you hold him accountable without having a relationship. So how do you have relationships with people? You come out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You do things where men are and let them become part of your huddle, and it will save your
Mm.
life.
Yeah. No, it's so good. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. But no, I think I love where you took it. I'm so excited you brought up the Black community too, because that's such a I know there's statistics out there that mental health is like not talked about almost at all.
Hmm.
And I would love to just hear from you, from your perspective, like, why do you think that's so, there's such a stigma when it comes to people talking about mental health in the Black community?
I think it's generational.
Mm.
You know, the from all the stuff that some African Americans suffered from
Right.
before us, you didn't have people to run to.
Mm.
And so I think some of that was passed down, that you can't show a
Yeah.
weakness. You know, you have to work extra harder.
Mm.
I mean, this is stuff I had to do go through myself. I know you have to work extra harder, and it sadly it was just the way of society at that time, that
Mm-hmm.
you got in trouble. Just think about, not even 3 generations removed, they couldn't read
Yeah.
without getting in trouble. You know what I'm saying? So, but with all of that stuff said, things have gotten better
Yeah.
over the years. And I think some of those old things that you don't share what's going on in this
Mm-hmm.
house. You don't talk about this in this house.
Mm-hmm.
Tough it up.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't feeling good today and not wanting to, you tough it up. You got to take care of your family. And I think all of those things that men have been, especially African American men, have been told, it kind of gets to you after a while,
Yeah.
as the standard of, you have to be above board in
Mm.
everything you do. You can't show a weakness. And if you're saying you got ADHD, if you're
Mm.
saying you're depressed, if you're saying this, if you're saying that, that is a weakness, my friend. You cannot show that. And I'm seeing, and I'm loving it more and more, that men are starting, especially African American men, are starting to come forward and say, you know what? I'm hurting right now.
Mm-hmm.
These feelings of sadness I've been feeling weeks and months, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Go and seek out help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the trust factor there, but I think men, if we can get men, African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, whatever you want to call them, if we can get men to just look in the mirror, you see, we live in a society where it's easy to pick up the magnifying glass. And you know what you do with a magnifying glass? You magnify problems.
Mhm.
This person ain't doing that, that person ain't doing that. But you know what the mirror does? It reflects the person you see.
Mm.
And that's the person you have to tell every day that, you know what? I am enough, for one.
Mhm.
I'm more than a conqueror.
Yep.
I can fall, but I can get back up again.
Yep.
Failing is a part of life.
Mm.
Learn from your mistakes. I don't have to be perfect. Again, I said it before, that's only one perfect person,
Yep.
and his name ain't Skeeta. His name ain't whatever the man name is. That's only one. He is not looking for perfection. He's looking for progress. When you fall, what are you learning from it?
Mhm.
Number one, did it teach you a lesson? How can you do better next time? We have to get away from, as men in general, that we have to have it, we have to get it right all the time. No, we're not robots.
Yeah.
We're not programmed to get it right every time. Edison, we wouldn't have electricity, a light bulb, I mean, he if he wouldn't have had the fortitude of saying a righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up again. You have to keep getting back up.
Yep.
And the more you get back up, men, from mistakes you make, the more you get up from the pain you go through, the stronger you become.
Mm.
Failing is not a fault. Failing is not a weakness. Failing is just let you know that you're human.
Yeah.
You're human and you're going to
Mhm.
make mistakes.
Yeah. Oh man, I think that's a perfect place to stop this conversation. We could go on for a long time, just talking about
Yeah,
this because it needs to be talked about. But I think this is a great place to start a conversation, and so I'm hoping that this starts a lot of
yes,
conversations. And I will put your information, whatever you want to give to me. I'll put it in the
yes,
show notes so that if people want to find you on social media or wherever else you are, that we can connect with you. Because I think that this conversation is so important. And I am so grateful
yes,
for you to be a part of this and to have this conversation with me and share your experiences and share the way you are seeing things in this world, because I think it's so important that we always look from different perspectives.
yes.
Thank you for being on. And, we might
Well,
have to
well,
do this again.
thank you for letting me ramble, because I know that's more stuff you want to ask me, but as you can tell, I'm kind of passionate.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.